Farpoint is a rare game. It's rare in the sense that it is one of the first truly made for VR titles that is 100% based on full analog stick movement without any teleporting around. But most importantly, Farpoint is rare in the sense that it really feels like it has the polish and breadth of a AAA game. In Farpoint, you play the role of an astronaut that's caught in a bizarre deep space anomaly that sucks you and two others into a disturbing vortex. After emerging on the other side, you crash land on a strange alien world and set out on a journey to piece together what's happened and where the other two survivors have gone. Most of the story is told through holographic conversations you discover along the way by scanning the environment and recorded camera footage from aboard spacecraft. Narratively, it gets the job done. This isn't going to blow any minds or redefine the way video game stories are told, but it's enough to keep you pushing through. I found myself caring about the main two NPC characters more than I have in previous VR titles, and a major part of that is due to the stellar voice acting. Facial animations are a step above the rest as well, but characters' body animations could use some work, especially for your character in his shadow. I'd advise trying not to look down too much because your spacesuit obscures your vision, and admittedly the stiff, rigid shadow animations look a bit ridiculous. Farpoint is easily one of the most elaborate VR-only games that I've played so far that feels like it was designed specifically to appeal directly to core gamers. The package includes a solid 5-hour-long campaign, replayable single-player challenge maps, and an addictive, cooperative wave-based survival mode. I'd have liked for the campaign to be a bit longer, but it tells a tight story well, which is ultimately preferable over an elongated and bloated one. Enemy variety felt fine for the most part, although it starts to grow a bit repetitive near the end. A big part of that has to do with the technological limitations of the platform. Since the PSVR is a forward-facing only device, that means that the game's developers had to make sure you don't feel the need to turn completely around while playing. However, if you've got the stomach for it, you can enable turning controls using the aim's second analog stick, which felt great to me, but isn't necessarily recommended for those easily susceptible to motion sickness. This option can use either snap turning or smooth turning. With full smooth turning unlocked, I found myself able to easily sprint around levels and fire my shotgun while running backwards staring down the game's largest beasts. In a way, it reminded me of playing Doom when things really started to get intense. Unfortunately though, those moments seem few and far between. As effective as the campaign is when it's clicking on all cylinders and not hitting occasional hardware hiccups, the real stars of the show to me were the cooperative multiplayer maps. Shooting side by side with the buddy, running around maps, dodging enemy fire, and pushing forward one wave at a time is exhilarating. It takes all of the best high action moments from the campaign and stacks them together while you're back to back with a friend. Regardless of game mode though, Farpoint really excels best when it makes you forget that you're holding a controller in your hand and you really feel immersed in the world around you. Little things like lifting the gun over my shoulder to switch weapons, holding the stock up to my shoulder to aim down the sights, and bobbing my head out of the way to avoid returning fire really sold me on the illusion of the adventure. But again, the PSVR and its tracking camera are far from ideal. The camera's tracking area is displayed as a field in front of you during setup with a clear ceiling and floor. In the best conditions, lifting the aim over my head or leaning down with it below my waist resulted in a loss of tracking. After prolonged play, I also noticed slight drifting, causing the game to think I was aiming off center when I was actually holding it straight. This immediately took me out of the experience. But to be clear, the PlayStation VR aim controller itself is fantastic. As silly as it looks, it feels amazing to hold, all of the buttons are perfectly placed and entirely ambidextrous, and I never once felt the need to peek under my visor to see where buttons were. I held the gun and everything just felt perfect. And if you're not planning on picking up the aim, then I might even go so far as saying to wait until you do so before you even play Farpoint. While it does support the DualShock 4 as an option, its inclusion is atrocious. Instead of using a scheme similar to Riggs or Resident Evil 7 that basically track your head and your analog stick movement to aim, the game asks you to hold up the controller and aim it in place of using the aim controller. It feels silly and awkward. Again though, that being said, it's worth restating how great the aim feels. Holding the Oculus Touch controllers or HTC Vive wands out in front of me, floating, pretending to be wrapped around a gun that isn't really there, just isn't a good enough replacement for actually holding something in my hands. In that sense, when paired with the game itself as intended, Farpoint surpasses some of the best VR games on other platforms from a pure immersion perspective. But then you're occasionally reminded that PSVR's inferior tracking from time to time and send you crashing back down to earth. The pros for Farpoint are that playing with the aim controller feels incredibly immersive. There's a lot of content between the campaign, co-op, and challenge missions. There's excellent voice acting with a capable story to back it up, and there are simply some great production values. However, the cons are that the DualShock 4 controller just is terrible to use if you don't have the aim. The campaign is a little short and there's not any competitive multiplayer to speak of, and finally, the hardware limitations of the PSVR do hold it back a bit. In the end, Upload VR awards Farpoint for PSVR a final score of 7.5 out of 10. Farpoint's best moments are some of the best slices of entertainment I've seen in VR to date. When the action is pumping and the tracking is cooperating, I forget that I'm even holding a plastic little toy peripheral at all, and I truly feel immersed in the world itself. Shooting feels great and the atmosphere is convincing. But then the levels start to feel repetitive, the campaign is a bit brief, and the design limitations rear their ugly head. For better and for worse, based on current capabilities, Farpoint is the game that PSVR deserves. An exhilarating but flawed AAA quality VR shooter.